Khandanam bhavam bandhanam jagam bandhanam bandim tomai niranjanam nararupa dhara niranjanam nararupa dhara nirgunam gunam mochana agha dushana jaga dushana chid ghana kai gyanan jana vimala nayana gyanan jana vimala nayana vikhanim moham jai bhashara bhavam shagara chiram unmada prema pathar bhaktar janam yugala charana bhaktar janam yugala charana taranam bhavam jrim bheta yuga isharam jagam deshara yogam shaham niram dhanam shamahita manam niram dhanam shamahita manam nirakhim tavam kripa vanjana dukha ganjana karuna ghana karma kathar pranar pana jagata tarana pranar panam jagata tarana kriyantanam kalim dor vanchana kamam kanchana ati nindita indriyam ra sharam he naram vara tagish sharam he naram vara deha padem anum rag nirbhaya gatam shangshaya drira nisyaya manasa van nishkam ranam bhakata sharana nishkam ranam bhakata sharana taji jatim kulam man sampada tava sri pada bhava goshpada vari yatha premar panam shamadaram shana premar panam shamadaram shana jaga jana dukham sampada tava sri pada bhava goshpada variyathai premarpana samadarashana premarpana samadarashana jagajana dukha jay namo namo prabhu vakyamanatita namo namo prabhu vakyamanatita manavachanaika dhan prabhu manavachanaika dhan jyotir jyoti ujjal hridhi kandar jyotir jyoti ujjal hridhi kandar tumitam bhanjan har prabhu tumitam bhanjan har namo namo prabhu vakyamanatita namo namo prabhu vakyamanatita manavachanaika dhan prabhu manavachanaika dhan jyotir jyoti ujjal hridhi kandar jyotir jyoti ujjal hridhi kandar tumitam bhanjan har prabhu tumitam bhanjan har yadadalanga ranga bhanga vaje anga shanga mridanga yadadalanga ranga bhanga vaje anga shanga mridanga gaise chanda bhakat brinda arati tumar gaise chanda bhakat brinda arati tumar jaya jaya arati tumar har har arati tumar shiva shiva arati tumar khandana bhava bandhana jaga bandhana bande tamai jai Sri Guru Maharaj Ji ki jai. ॐ ह्रीं ऋतं त्वमचलो गुणजित् गुणेभ्यः नक्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्तयलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्त्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदये न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसां त्वयि तृप्त तृष्णां रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मर्त्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्मि नाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारीं श्रान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्यं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ सर्वमङ्गल मङ्गले शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टि स्थिति विनाशानां शक्ति भूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणा Maye Narayanim Namostute Sharanagato Dinarto Paritrana Parayane Sarvas Sharati Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Jayana Rayani Namostute Jayanarayani Namostute Jayanarayani Namostute Jayanarayani Namostute. जय महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय।
Hello, check. Hello, check. Hello. Hello, check. Yeah. Huh? Sound is come. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraya Sachit Sukhasvarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we are meeting after a very long time, probably more than 2 months. We were discussing this lecture of Vivekananda called God in Everything. And essentially, the first part of this lecture of his, he essentially addressed this problem that, there is all the troubles in the world, and then more or less all religions in the world prescribed a certain thing called renunciation, which means basically giving up the life of the senses. And then he addresses the consequent problem. I mean, this is supposed to be a somewhat didactic preaching that is there in more or less all religions at a certain level. And then the existential problem arises, and yet what remains to us if this theory involves giving up the life of the senses, the life as we know it? What remains? And what else do we mean by life? So here's the question. I mean, basically say, okay, fine. It's given in different forms. In the more theistic religions, there's this notion of sin, etc., etc. Somehow or the other, to the modern thinking man, this idea doesn't really make much sense. And finally, at a certain level, the question arises, okay, fine, this is what you're prescribing, but why? I mean, after all, is there any, I mean, it's somehow or the other a certain group of priests who want to arrogate a certain power to themselves over society and prescribe certain injunctions that the rest of society should follow. Clearly, there's a certain sneaky sense of power seeking that is going on, essentially expecting all and sundry to follow a certain norm so that a group of people who make up these rules have power. That's a kind of a more modern response, and this has happened several times where this seeking of power and the imposing of rules, converting those rules without enough rational justification into injunctions, has been overthrown by people over and over and over again. Why? Basically because, I mean, certain group of people deciding to make up rules, call it religion, and have no rational justification is not an acceptable solution. And so, what is this prescription, or is this idea of renunciation just one of these things? Secretly, the people who are saying you give up, do they have the intention of enjoying the fruits of somebody else's labor? This question arises. And so, what exactly is this prescription for renunciation? What does renunciation really mean? Is what is about to be discussed here. We shall understand this better when later on we come to the more philosophical portions of the Vedanta. But for the present, I beg to state that in Vedanta alone, we find a rational solution to the problem. Here I can only lay before you what the Vedanta seeks to teach, and that is the deification of the world. This word deification the first three, this DEI, it's from Latin, comes from Deus, which basically means God, which means basically seeing all of this world as God. The Vedanta does not in reality denounce the world. The ideal of renunciation nowhere attains such a height as in the teachings of the Vedanta, but at the same time, dry, suicidal advice is not intended. It really means deification of the world, giving up the world as we think of it, as we know it, as it appears to us, and to know what it really is. Deify it, it is God alone. We read at the commencement of one of the oldest of the Upanishads, whatever exists in this world is to be covered with the Lord. This is a one paragraph summary of what he means, and there's a fair bit of, it's fairly densely packed here. First, two words are opposed. I mean, these two words are opposed to each other: denunciation and renunciation. See, first one, denunciation, which means basically a condemnation of this world as we know it, is not what is meant here. Not denunciation, but, and now we come to this other word, renounce or renunciation, and what exactly does it mean? And he says, give up this. What is it that is to be given up? Essentially, the worldview that gives us trouble. Which means that this fragmented view of the world, such and such, I mean, see, what really bothers us? Is it really when we look at this world around us, this is a light, that's a fan, this is a carpet? This kind of factual knowledge, does it really bother us? Not quite. What does? What does is that, okay, no, what is my connection to this? Oh, this is a person, I like this. It's hot, I don't like that. This is a person, oh, this is, I feel very annoyed whenever I see this person. This subjective reaction, which makes up our worldview, is what bothers us. So our worldview, our individual worldview, a subjective reaction to the world, is what bothers us. One of those description of the Vedanta, drishti, which means view. Yeah? So suppose we have a lens right in front of our eyes which distorts the world. Then whatever we see is going to be the effect of the distortion wrought by that lens. Here what Vivekananda is pointing out is that this distortion is already there in our psyches in a certain form. And most higher noble human endeavors, all of them, in some form or the other, they try to go beyond this naive, limited view of the world, which is what makes us suffer. This naive view is what makes us suffer. Go through these highs of misery, of joys and misery. But as we clean up, as we refine that worldview itself through whichever form suits us, we get to a cleaner and cleaner and more unified view of the world. So, for example, let me just narrate something. This is something that I found very inspiring recently. So, all of you know probably that there is a war going on between Israel and this group Hamas in Palestine. Yeah. Again, so this is exactly the kind of misery that happens. There's a painful event. People are dying on both sides. What is at the root of it? Each group is going to give certain justifications. Finally, but let's try to detach ourselves from the particulars of that conflict and try to look at, say, war and the misery it brings as a certain event, as a certain fact, certain existential fact of human society today. What is at the root of it? There are certain resources, say land, etc., etc., and there's a group of people who feel that it is their right to have those resources, and there's this other group of people who should not have the same resources. And then there's a conflict. It's a conflict which manifests sometimes as war, sometimes as something, some other kind of fighting. But anyway, this is what it is about. Some resource, and there are two groups of people who wish to have those external resources to themselves. And conflict breaks up. What is then there at the foundation of this conflict? There is that group and there is this group, and that group is the other. It could have different labels, but that group is other, this group is me, with which I identify, and that group is the other with which I disidentify. And because of this lack of identification, one can successfully treat this other group as the other. And so, one can fight between these two groups, in favor of one against the other, in order to capture some resources that are there in the world. At a certain point, sometimes these fights that are there, they are not even over resources, but they are over, for the sake of, say, for example, sometimes power, sometimes even ideological. And this goes on. At the end of the day, such conflict really causes harm to both. What then is a way out? Look at and identify the root of the problem. Even in this particular war, these are two groups of people who are genetically very similar. And strangely, it is these conflicts are very often really amongst people or two peoples whose genetic similarity is remarkable, which means that in terms of origin, the scientific point of view will say that they are very, very close in the evolutionary tree. And it is there that the fights are the most severe. Why? Because they are close by, there's a limited amount of resources that they have to fight to gain for themselves. So this is the cause of the conflict. Resolution is essentially this thing here. What you regard as the other, as different from you, is exactly that which is going to come back to bite you, to come back to limit yourself. This is something that is as old as history itself. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but there's this David Attenborough who makes these animal documentaries. And one episode, he talks about chimpanzees. These are basically native to Africa. And one group of chimpanzees, at some point, they decide to go and harass or essentially take away the resources from a neighboring group of chimpanzees. And so they go there and attack in a herd, kill a few of them, come back. Essentially, what is being demonstrated there is just that we have the might, we are going to lord it over you. It was not that these people, they are two different groups of chimpanzees, two different tribes, so to speak. They are in different parts of the forest. They are having their own zone where there are enough resources for them to survive. Yet one group goes, kills a few of them, and comes back to its own native area. And when I saw that, what struck me was that so the chimpanzees and human beings have probably bifurcated on the evolutionary tree, say somewhere around a few million years back, maybe around 6, 7, thereabouts. So the nearest evolutionary neighbor to this species, Homo sapiens, are the chimpanzees. What struck me remarkably was that there isn't that much difference between us, human beings, and our much vaunted society and the fights that are there here, and the fight that the chimpanzee tribes do. It's a very graphic description that was there. But we really do fight more or less the same way. What started off as a fight for resources becomes in time, as far back as chimpanzees, just a method of demonstrating power. Becomes an end in itself. The sense of differentiation, that is the other, this is us, is what is emphasized here. And it is precisely this other that limits us, that causes us misery. See, at the end of the day, even the attacking tribe of chimpanzees had casualties. So what is the solution? What is the solution? At a certain level, this is genetically intrinsic to us. This is the route we have followed evolutionarily. So what are we to do today? So today we have, again, this opposing instinct, which basically says that you can increase the size of your tribe. That's what is being said. That which you thought of as the other is really no different from yourself. That is the solution that's being provided here. You have this other, you have us. Really, can we combine these two into a larger we? Which means seeing that the person on who we were thinking of as the other, do they have the same reactions to various life situations as us in a fundamental way? As soon as that is recognized, not in terms of some silly ideology, but purely in terms of checking for oneself whether this person who we were associating with a certain label is essentially the same as us or not. And once we recognize that, then we see that, look, whatever my concerns are, whatever we were talking about as the us, whatever our concerns are, is no different from the fundamental concerns of those who we regarded as they, as the other. This expansion is what is being prescribed here. As soon as that expansion is there, a sharing of resources with understanding becomes easier. And the fighting which was there as a certain given is no longer there. So what has happened here? In this transformation of a conflict into understanding, not denunciation. That was actually what was happening initially. There is this other who are terrible. This is called denunciation. What has happened is essentially this renunciation of this idea of otherness, and automatically a sense of sharing comes up. There is this famous statement of Gandhi, says, the world has enough for everybody's need. It does not have enough for everybody's greed. What those chimpanzees were doing was exactly an indulgence in greed, not need. It's just going to another tribe, beating them up, telling them, essentially saying that we are also going to come and capture your resources. There's no need for it. But there is a certain kind of storing away resources for an indefinite future. That's the psyche that is being countered here. As soon as this, otherwise, without that, without this meaningless conflict, which eats up so much of our resources, fast forward to today. We have huge economies which are running on basically fear and war, particularly amongst, and very much similar to the case of the chimpanzees, whenever there are two nations which are neighboring each other, there is this suspicion, threat, fear, etc., etc. And as a result, a huge amount of resources go into protecting the border. This is the war effort, a huge amount of economical waste. That which could have been used in both countries for the uplift of people, to give people a more reasonable existence, a reasonable livelihood. Much of the resources are being used to fight another nation. Fight does not mean literally in terms of a war in general, but in feeding into a certain fear psychosis instead of coming to a mutual understanding. Now is this reasonable? Is this solution at all really possible? This this removal of the sense of the other, is it a practicable solution? I believe that it really is. Suppose you have, just think of the EU today, the European Union. This is a bunch of nations. In 1940s, the Second World War, the conflict was within the nations that today constitute the European Union. But various ways of thinking got these countries together, essentially making the boundaries porous. If you are a member of one European country amongst which are members of this EU, then it's much easier to travel to another. It is much easier to do commerce. So which means this is a kind of a step in the right direction. It is essentially a statement that says we decided not to look upon all these nations which we used to think of as different from us. We do not any longer do so at a certain level. Which means, and as a result, what has happened? Each of those countries which is wasting resources, trying to secure various things, is now a more stable, economically, health-wise, etc., etc. The notion of a nation state is relatively recent. Why should not these notions of boundaries between countries slowly dissolve by this expansion of the notion of the I? Part of it is also got to follow from the fact that as soon as we regard another nation, another people, another group of people as other, I am actually making my life, my individual life, more painful, more miserable. Psychologically, I am indulging in these instincts which trouble us: fear, hatred, anger. This is at the individual level. At a community level, the same thing translates into not addressing common problems that face all of us as a species. and instead spending and wasting our time in creating this idea of the other and fighting that notion. The final fight really is in our heads. The notion of the other is in our heads, the fight is in our heads, and this conflict goes on, drains resources, drains energy. It's of no benefit, finally, to anybody. What then? This negative fight, which was there at the beginning, throw it away. Recognize that at least as parts of a larger whole, we stand to gain much more. Philosophically, psychologically, pragmatically, at all levels. This is what is being talked about. A first step, finally, and then he's going to come to something much more drastic later on. This is conflict between people as resources, when the fight is over resources. Next time, this other paragraph, he'll basically say at the end of the next paragraph, I mean, this is, he will address the basic existential fear that human beings have. And it will end with, he, which means the Lord, is in life and death. Which means that finally it is the same. It is this same consciousness, what those who are inclined to more dualistic ideas call God. It is that same which underlies life and death itself. Suppose one could really do it. Suppose one could really do it. What then? Suppose one could see God in life, God in death, or the same one undivided consciousness pervading what we call life and death itself. What happens? Immediately this root fear, for which all this conflict, the fear of death, goes away. And then the root cause of all fear, anger, etc., hatred, vanishes, because one understands that there is no power on earth which can take this view away from me. This individual body mind might collapse, but the core of it remains unaffected. That is where we are being coaxed to move towards. Let me just conclude with, this is supposed to be a view outward leading to a gradual transformation of the world around us to a world view which is more undivided, more all-embracing. How does this sync with, how does this gel with the analytical aspect of things that we have discussed before? Saesha neti neti atma. That's something that is not quite being discussed here. What about this analysis? And just today, we're going through this passage of this Mandukya Upanishad. Prapancha Upashamam. It's one of the deepest passages there. Prapancha Upashamam Shantam Shivamadvaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Savigneya. And it starts off with Na Anta Pragya, Na Bahish Pragya, Na Ubhayata Pragya, Na Apragya, Na Pragya. Na Pragya, Na Apragya. See, this is it. Na means not. Na anta pragya. That means it is not consciousness directed inwards. Na bahish pragya. It's not consciousness directed outwards. Na ubhayata pragya. It is not consciousness directed in both directions, inward and outward. Na apragyam. It is not non-knowledge. Na pragyam. It is not knowledge. See, this is exactly what the Vaya Negativa is about. Essentially, it tries to say that all these limited ways of looking and viewing things is not what you are really seeking. And then it gives the positive aspects of the same things. Because finally, we have to think in terms of words, in terms of language. Shantam Shivamadvaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Savigneya. Shantam. Yeah. So here it's going to come here itself. Yeah. So this whole business is actually this God and everything. It comes from this Chandogya Upanishad statement. Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. All this is God alone. That's or Ishavasya. That's where it's going to come from. So Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Savignya. So that is this all pervading peace. Where does that peace come? Does it come in the world? In the physical world? No. It comes over us in our own psyche. The ruptures, the fight, that conflict, the seeking of fear, anger, hatred, evolutionary leftovers are recognized as no longer necessary. And then once thrown away, Shantam Shivamadvaitam Chaturtham Manyante. This peace comes over us and automatically leads to peace in the world. This is where we'll return to. Essentially a recognition that this, what that we are seeking, is already ours. And it is there in life and death. This larger view leads to exactly this idea of this psychological fact of peace. Why? That means nothing that I have can ever be really taken away from me. And that which can be taken away is not an essential component of my being. This is where it's headed. Yeah? That's the pure tangible benefit of this larger worldview that is one is being encouraged to look for. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.